Hello everyone. Now we are at video number 3, the 3D editor MBeditviz. The topics that we are gonna cover are what MBeditviz is and why it's important to use it, how to launch and navigate it, how to choose between different views and manage UI and controls, editing and visualization features, ending with performance tips, workflow integration, and best practices. Now, let's open the tool. With the terminal open, I have typed MBeditviz and added our data list. If I press enter, the tool shows up, and here I have my data list loaded with all my files. In some cases, I may decide to choose just a limited number of files if my dataset is very large and big, but in this case I will press view all files to load the whole data list. The tool tries to give me a standard resolution, but I can change that by dragging this slider. In this case, I would change the resolution to 70 meters and press apply. Now the data is getting interpolated, and since this data set is very small, this will happen very fast. Here I can see a 3D representation of my data in X, Y, and the color is the Z, or depth. Here I can see the navigation of my lines, and I can see the morphology, but I can also see artifacts, things that are not real, or things that are erroneously acquired by the system. I can also change the presentation of the data. Instead of using topography, I can say use the slope, or for instance the standard deviation, which can help me highlight certain problems like here. So going back, I can say, for example, that I want to have shading by illumination, which sets a light source and can help me also see more problems with the data, but it can also help me hide problems. And then at last, for instance, I can say I want to see contour lines. I can switch off the navigation in case I want to see more clearly the data. And I can say, well, I want a different color table. For example, bright rainbow, or grayscale, or sea level. Well, now I will enable again the navigation so that we can see our navigation lines, and I will switch back to the standard color table. And I will remove the contour lines so that we can see more clearly the artifacts. Now I will click here on pick area, and I will select that area. I know, for instance, that I have some artifacts here at the center of the line, which is slightly below the navigation line, but I can see already some parts here. So we'll press and select a certain area. As you can see here, I selected a square area, but my problems are more or less over this line. So another thing I can do is that I can look here with the mouse mode, and I can see that I can press the middle mouse and drag area, but that is, parallel to the line that I dragged. And then in this case, I can select this other area that is more narrow, and I can make it even narrower if I press the right mouse and drag up and down. And now I have selected this other box here. And if I switch back, now I have that window again with the 3D soundings. Note here that I have a similar pattern where the mouse buttons have different functions. And if I maximize this window, I can see again the soundings, but in higher detail. And I can see that I have some soundings that are detaching quite a lot from the surface. And I know that these are artifacts. Probably these guys here as well. So what we have to do now is that we have to click on erase. And then, for instance, I can edit or flag those soundings. And if I switch and I rotate the surface, I can see, okay, those soundings here are bad. So let's go and remove those as well. And I keep removing more. But as I do this, I can see that the soundings start to get a bit on our way. And therefore, I can go here and say, show flagged soundings, and I can disable that feature. That feature is very helpful because once we start editing the data, we don't want to see the problems anymore. We just want to see the good soundings. And in this case, now I can remove more of those soundings. Okay, and now I think I'm satisfied, although I can see still some problems here, for instance here. But then I press dismiss. And if I look here, I can see that some soundings were already removed. So I will disable the navigation so that I can see more clearly in this area. And if I now press action, update bathymetry grid, the interpolation will run again and the map will be slightly better. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video is that one important aspect of when using MBeditviz is that we should have an idea of which resolution we want for the final map. In this case, I would like to have a map with 75 meters resolution or 70 meters. And then therefore it's important to choose that resolution because then what we see is what we get. If I clean the map so that it looks good with 70 meters, when I grid it with MB grid, then the map will look exactly like I see here. In this case, I can see that by removing those soundings, this file and this file and this file already have edits. So let's continue editing. So in case you want to have a very quick editing of the area, sorry, I was here at peak area. I have to switch back to pen and zoom. So I want to zoom out a little bit. And then I go to peak area. And in this case, I will pick the whole survey. So here I can see the whole survey. You can see now that the rotation is not super smooth. But in case I want to do a very quick and dirty editing of the data, I can see here that I have some soundings here, there, and there that are very wrong. And if I rotate more, I can see other problems here and there. And then I can go and erase those again. Note that I'm not being very careful, so I added some soundings that I didn't want to. But I'm trying to do it very quickly so that this video doesn't get very long. So now that I have done a bit more editing, I can see here some soundings detaching from the main surface. And then I see, okay, I'm close to satisfied here. One thing I also have to mention is that we can color this surface by topography. So we could have an idea of the depth range. And I can see here, for instance, that I have a problem here, but I will leave it as it is now. So it's important in this workflow that we aim for the resolution that we are aiming for the final grid, that we also load enough files but not too many, because if we load too many files, this 3D sounding will be too sluggish and too slow, and then it will be difficult to rotate and find the proper spot. But of course, as I showed before, you can always go to certain areas. In this case, I've noticed that I have removed too much because of my sloppy editing. So I will go there again and I will select this area, and now I can see, oof, I removed far too many soundings. So this illustrates a problem that we can have if we are not very careful with the editing, is that now I removed a lot of soundings over this plane here that is exactly at the surface of the bottom, and what I want to get rid of is these soundings that are detaching significantly out of the seafloor, because those are artifacts. So it's important to be careful with the 3D editor as well as with the 2D editor. So sometimes less is more, and we have to be very careful when editing the sound, because it's very easy to do over editing. So with that, we conclude this video and we go to the next one. So bye bye.